Angelites. It's your boy Angelo's World. Welcome back to our world. Gates of Graceland, Elvis in 1955. I did one a while ago. It was Elvis in Vegas, or Elvis in Vegas 1969. And you guys absolutely loved that one. So I'm back with another one. Let's check this one out together. Smash that like button. Let's run the likes up and let's go, you guys.
Hi Elvis fans, Tom Brown here. You've probably seen me during Elvis Week doing interviews on stage during conversations and at the Insiders Conference, places like that, and also probably just walking around randomly talking to people. But one of the special guests that we've never been able to put with me during Elvis Week, I'm very happy that we finally locked him down here in Nashville at the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum. Peter Guralnick, one of the writers I think that has been most responsible, if not the writer who's been most responsible with separating fact from fiction with your two books, The Last Train to Memphis and Careless Love. And I think those books have dealt with, you know, the Elvis world and all the different aspects of his life. One of the things I wanted to talk with you about today is a year that sometimes gets forgotten. Everybody talks about Elvis 56 and, you know, what happened in 56 to Elvis. But really, I think 1955 is a year that the planes...
Because, and he said everybody talks about 1956. It's ironic because if you guys remember, I reacted to a documentary called Elvis, Summer of Elvis, or Summer of 56, Elvis Summer of 56. So it's ironic that he said everybody talks about 56. Because again, there was a documentary I reacted to that's titled Elvis Presley Summer of 56.
Line up on the runway for what's going to be happening in his career. 54, you know, Sun happens and those recordings happens in 54. And then 55, he starts the year off as just somebody on a bill, like third or fourth, and by the end of the year, he's, you know, the headliner. In looking at the book and in looking at the years of Elvis, what are your feelings about 1955 and how important it is?
Well, it really marked the emergence of Elvis, not on a national stage so much. That happened in 56, but it really permitted him to emerge as much more than just another regional star. For one thing, at the beginning of the year, it put him together with his future manager, Colonel Parker, who saw him early, either in December of 54 or early January. Went to see him at the Hayride, I think, towards the end of the month, towards the end of January. Put him on tour with Hank Snow, and by August had essentially taken over his management. And that really was looking towards Bob Neal. Had been a great friend to Elvis. He had been a good manager, but he clearly was limited. He had his radio show. He wasn't going to give up his radio show. He was Memphis-centric. And Elvis was looking to a much larger audience. The other thing is that having had That's All Right had been a huge success in the Mid-South, in Texas. That came out in 54. Elvis played the Hayride for the first time, I think in October of 54, and was a big star by the end of the year on the Hayride, which reached a national audience. But he had never really had he didn't repeat the success. His second two singles didn't repeat the success of That's All Right. And it wasn't until he put out Baby Let's Play House in the summer of 55 that he had something that really began to hit on a wider scale. And that was still rising when Sam Phillips at Sun Records put out I Forgot to Remember to Forget and Mystery Train towards, I can't remember, it was July or August of 55. And that went on to become his first top 10 national hit, and probably precipitate a sale that had been bubbling up for some months. But really put him on the radar of all the record companies, which eventually led to the sale of his contract to RCA.
Yeah, and that's something, you mentioned Bob Neal, his first manager, or first official manager, I guess Scotty,
Scotty had been the official manager also.
Had been there. Elvis outgrew Bob Neal, and in a way, he was too big for Sam. He was too big for Sun, because Sam was Memphis-centric and wanted, success, but it just got to be almost too much at the behest of the other. He was losing focus on other artists that he had on the label.
Well, Sam Phillips had from the time he first opened the Sun Studio in January of 1950, had as broad a vision as you could possibly have. It had to do with essentially reforming American society, of making people open to, what Walt Whitman wrote, I Hear America Singing. Sam heard America singing, and the voices were coming from people who had never been paid any attention to, both black and white. But what he didn't want to do, and the reason he could never have, personality aside, he was not a promoter, he was not a manager, but basically the fundamental reason why he could never have or would never have wanted to be the person to promote Elvis onto the national stage, well, one, he didn't want to be known as a one-artist, producer wasn't really the word, whatever, one-artist man, a one-artist studio, one-artist label.
Yeah, yeah.
And with the money that he got from the sale of Elvis's contract, he was not only to be able to reclaim the company, which was on the brink of bankruptcy, to bring the company into, but also he was able to put out Blue Suede Shoes and to promote it, and to have this parade of artists afterwards, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis, Roy Orbison, with whom he had hit after hit coming out of this tiny little storefront location at 706 Union Avenue. So it was a matter both of his sense of his ambitions, of much broader, much bigger ambitions than promoting a single artist, but also the fact that he simply needed to be able to generate enough money to put those plans into action.
How did, you mentioned it briefly, that at the beginning of the year, in '55, Colonel Parker sees Elvis at the hayride, and by the end of the year is the one sitting in the booth talking with Sam about, signing the paperwork to get Elvis to RC.
Am I the only one who wishes he never met Colonel Parker? I guess he kind of played a part in Elvis's success. But it's just like, what if, like, literally, what if? But yeah, am I the only one who wishes he never met him in the first place? Let's talk about it.
Yeah, talk a little bit about what happened and how Colonel was able to come into Elvis's life. I know he got close with Vernon and Gladys, I believe.
Well, he really courted Vernon and Gladys. He also he had from the beginning a kind of private communication with Elvis. Elvis was a person of great loyalty, but also a person of enormous personal ambition. Elvis did not limit his ambition, and he couldn't have defined what it was. He couldn't have said, this is exactly where I want to go. But in speaking to the Colonel, and in becoming acquainted with what Colonel had done, not just with Hank Snow, whom he was out there with. The Colonel had only been working with Hank Snow for maybe 6 months at this point, but with Eddie Arnold, whose career really gave all the signposts for what Elvis's career would become. I think that the most important person that the Colonel had to convince was Elvis, and Elvis was convinced over the course of 6 months or 8 months, or I think very quickly he was convinced that this was the way he would have of realizing his greatest ambitions, of reaching not just a local audience, not just a regional audience, and perhaps not even just a national audience, but a world audience, which would have been impossible to have voiced at that time. But Colonel was very canny in the way he approached it, and so he got Hank Snow, I think, to speak to Elvis's parents, Vernon and Gladys, He got a friend of his, the Duke of Paducah, who I think whose real name was Whitey Ford, a country comedian, and I believe that he, spoke with Vernon and Gladys. Vernon appears to have been more won over than Gladys, but Gladys was somebody who was very fearful for her son, for her only child. And I think that's a natural, was a natural thing. The last people that Colonel had to persuade was RCA. I mean, were the record companies. And he set up a kind of bidding for Elvis before Elvis's contract was ever for sale. And when Sam Phillips confronted him about it, he says, "No, I didn't have anything to do with that." Ultimately, he wanted Elvis on RCA, where he had all of his contacts, where Hank Snow was on RCA, but he had worked with RCA for 10 years with Eddie Arnold, who was probably the biggest superstar that has ever existed in country music. I mean, even more than Garth Brooks, if you take into account the parameters of the time. And when Sam Phillips said, "I want $35,000 plus $5,000 to cover his back royalties," I think that really set Colonel, it set him back. Nobody had ever paid that kind of money.
I was going to say, that's an extraordinary amount of money.
Yeah, I think the most that had ever been paid for a pop star was $25,000. Was it for Frankie Lane, maybe? But in any case...
Sure, yeah, I know it was, I believe the record was $25,000.
Yeah, Colonel was, if nothing else, was a realist. And he put down $5,000 as an earnest to hold this offer, and then had to go to New York and sell RCA, and it was a very hard sell, and eventually he got the money. He would have lost his own money, his own $5,000, had he not gotten that, and by the middle of November he had a commitment from RCA, and that was really a week later, they all met at the Sun Studio, and Elvis became an RCA artist.
It's so difficult now to look back, and because we look back with history, we look back, we know what happens. We know what happens in 56, we know what happens in 66, we know what happens in 7. But at the time, in 1955, going day to day and going forward, there was no guarantee that this flash-in-the-pan Memphis artist that was only on Sun was going to last through the summer. But those shows that he was doing at the Louisiana Hayride, and really the touring he was doing at the time with Scotty and Bill, and I think DJ gets added in 55.
He got added in, I think, August of 55, then he got sick but came back.
Yeah. But that's really the expertise is being learned on the road at these little shows. And there's a little show also in 1955 that gets forgotten, and that is Elvis coming back to Tupelo on a bill, I think, with Webb Pierce and some other artists, that he comes back and plays his hometown.
He did, and although it was the following year
that was the big show.
That was the big
I think I reacted to this I reacted to this documentary. It's called, if you scroll through the Elvis Reactions playlist, it's called Elvis Return to Tupelo. Go check out that documentary. It was absolutely great.
The following 2 years, but 56, when he dedicated a good portion of the proceeds to build a park, I think, to build the kids. But yeah, in 55, he was also there. But, don't forget that his record, I forgot to remember to forget, was really rising all through the fall of 55, made the top 10. He was named the outstanding new country and western artist, or maybe just at the DJ convention in November. So all of this was coming together at the same time, and he was on the rise for sure, in a way that had never happened before. And he was becoming an extremely prominent country artist. I mean, rock and roll as a market didn't quite exist. You'd had Chuck Berry, you'd had Little Richard, you'd had records that had come out, and I'm sure Alan Freed had named it by then, but the point was it didn't exist as a full-scale market at that point, and it was more natural for someone like Elvis to be in the country and folk division. But one of the things that was remarkable was that in the contract with RCA, Colonel had inserted the clause that RCA would be an active promoter of Elvis making national television appearances in order to promote his records. As it turned out, RCA didn't lift a finger to do that, and nor did William Morris, which who had been Colonel was not only close to Abe Lastfogel, who ran William Morris. He would come to have offices at William Morris, but Harry, I can't remember Harry's last name, who ran the New York office, didn't do a thing, and it was Colonel who got Elvis his 6 appearances on the Dorsey Brothers stage show, the Jackie Gleason produced stage show, and he wrote to this guy at William Morris. He said, you know, if I had to depend on the kind of effort you've put into this, I'd be back to selling apples on a street corner. But this again was part of a vision that both he and Elvis had of really entering the world stage, not confining themselves to the way things had been done, but to finding a new way to reach literally millions of people at a single time.
Here we are 60 years later, 60th anniversary of 1955 and the changes that were happening in Elvis's career. Thank you so much, Peter Guralnick, for talking about that year that I said I sometimes think gets forgotten a little bit. So this year we're all going to be talking about 1955. And thanks so much for joining us here at the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum in Nashville.
Thanks.
And I look forward to talking to you later about some other things. Thanks,
Great.
Peter.
Well, thank you.
Elvis in 55. He had a lot going on in 55. He met Colonel Parker a year later and still doing shows in 55 and this, that, and the third. It was great hearing what he was doing in 55. You guys let me know what you thought about this video if you've never seen it before. What other things, what are things that you guys didn't know that you learned in this video if you didn't know them already? Let's talk about it. Comment down below if you guys enjoyed the video, because I surely did, hearing about what he was doing in 55 and 54 and things of that nature. Just I'm laughing because I just did something, but never mind. You guys let me know what you thought about this video, and let's talk about what you guys learned from this video, if you learned anything that you didn't know already. Comment down below what other Elvis reactions you guys would like to see. And if you do not want to miss any other Elvis reactions I have on the way for you guys, smash that subscribe button and turn on that post notification bell so you will be notified when my next Elvis reaction goes live. While you're at it, go check out my very last video, my reaction to Heart of Rome. That video will be over here, so make sure you guys go check that out. And I will put my reaction to Elvis Return to Tupelo also over here, so make sure you guys go check that out if you haven't seen my reaction already. And I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out. Peace.